Hello you sexy beasts and welcome back to War Thunder. Patch 1.71 brought absolute chaos to what we were used to in the matchmakers, both in the air and in the ground. Specifically over the past couple of days of playing this game, I've noticed a lot of people spamming out the P-51H. For good reason. Statistically, this is one of the, if not the best prop fighter in the game right now, pretty much on par with the Spitfire Mark 24 Griffin. And of course it also has a battle rating now to reflect that at 6.7. Sharing, once again with the Spitfire Mark 24, the highest battle rating for any prop fighter. Now given that both of these aircraft are on the Allied side, and the proposed changes for any nation being able to fight on any map hasn't been quite implemented yet by Gaijin, this means that most of the matches these guys are just going to be fighting amongst themselves on Hokkaido. And why is that? Well, because the other nations don't really have any comparable props. If we look at the Russian, for example, the highest prop fighter they have is the LA9 at 6.0. This thing can't really compete too well against P-51Hs and Griffin Spitfires. Now of course they do have 6.7 aircraft in the form of the X-15 and the X-17, but even these guys are severely handicapped against those aircraft, so people don't even try to play them out, really. The Japanese do have some very good and interesting aircraft, but anything that's 5.7 has been pretty much obliterated by the constant up tiers against P-51Hs. And really the only 6.7 aircraft they have is... yeah... Kika is a meme. And even the Italians don't even have any props above 5.3. They can never get down tiered, or they can never get up tiered against the P-51Hs. In fact, the only Italian aircraft that could face the P-51H is the F-84G, but this at battle rating 7.3 goes into the jet territory, and just by itself alone can't really force a down tier against P-51Hs. So what is the trick that I'm talking about in the title? What's this exploit, so to speak, that I'm going to show you guys in how to... well, let's say, troll the American teams. Let's take a look at the Germans. You see, the Germans do have a couple of 5.7 fighters. You have the Ta-152s, you have the Fokker 190 D12, you have all these premiums over here, the Do-335B2, the Fokker 190 D13 and the Tempest Mark 5. And of course, none of these fighters are really going to be effective against a full up tier against Griffin Spitfires and P-51Hs, right? So what do we have at this 6.7 range? Well, you have the Salamander, which is goddamn awful. You have the Arado 234B2, which doesn't have guns. And you have the Me-262A1U4, which in its own right is a very good aircraft, but the 50mm cannon is very hard to use and not the most effective thing to kill aircraft with. But there's another one. This is the Me-262A2A. This is a rare event aircraft I believe it is from the Operation Winter of the last year, and what this aircraft essentially is a Me-262A1A, which loses 2 of the 30mm cannons in the nose, as such that this one only has 2, but gains the ability of carrying up to a single 500 kilogram bomb. Now, you don't have to use the bomb. And in fact, if you don't use the bomb, this aircraft actually becomes lighter and better performing than the A1A. And all of this at a battle rating 6.7. Yes, this is an aircraft, a jet fighter, a fully fledged jet fighter by all respects and aspects, that is at the same battle rating as the Mark 24 Spitfire and the P-51H. When you take this aircraft out... essentially what you're doing is every single time, given that German players don't really want to play the 5.7 aircraft at the moment for good reason, every single time you take this aircraft out, you are forcing an up tier for the enemy team. Especially when you go up against the Americans, you are forcing them to fight a full team of 7.0 jets on your team. On our team we have Horton 229s, we have Me-262 A1As, we have our Gunarados, we even have an F-84G. This is actually a 7.3 up tier. Of course it's only a single F-84G, but that thing is also very, very powerful and can even counter their jets. Now of course, the enemy team is also going to have some jets. They're going to have P-80s, they're going to have F-80Cs, or Bs, I think it's Bs. But honestly, it's not much of an issue. The Me-262 has always been one of the best starter jets in the game. It's just a all around very good aircraft. It doesn't really excel particularly in any one single aspect, but much like the Russian aircraft and tanks, it is very rounded in all aspects. It has kind of bad acceleration at low speeds, but picks up at the higher speeds. The roll is decent. The thing is an absolute tank. You can take a lot of damage. You can even lose an engine and still make it back to base, which is also very good. The guns are hard to use sometimes, and depending on your ping and packet loss, it can be very sparky. And given that this thing only has 2 cannons as well, you kind of lose the ability of just saturating an area with 30mm cannon fire like you can with the A1A, but you can still use them very effectively if you go into shotgun range. It is very fast. Not quite as fast as F80s, for example, or F84s, but still faster than P80s and pretty much any prop. It can dive past 1000 km per hour. The turn rate is surprisingly good for a jet. You're going to see it later on in the gameplay. We're going to have a little dogfight against the P-51H. And of course a prop is going to beat a jet most of the time, unless you're talking about the Horten 229. But we can follow him pretty well. Now, what I did up until here was simply rush the enemy team. The P-51H at the start of the match relies completely upon climbing to altitude. Now, you have 2 ways of doing this. Given that the P-51H only has 7 minutes of water injection, where you have your maximum horsepower, either... Boom! Okay, sorry, that was just a glorious ball of fire. Either you are going to be using your water injection to get up to altitude, which limits your combat time afterwards, or you don't use your water injection and you essentially force yourself to not climb quite as well. By the way, that F84 was diving on me, but thanks to the amazing maneuverability of this thing, I was able to evade him. I went into a sharp dive, pulling 13G myself, which he simply cannot do. The F84 doesn't turn quite as well as the ME262, and he in fact broke off his wingtip. Now I'm going to try and chase him down to the base, but he's going to be faster than me, so I'm not going to be able to catch him. But it's not really an issue. He's going to have some problems trying to land without half a wing, so he's essentially dead. And even if he makes it back to base and is able to land, he's going to have a massive repair time, and essentially going to be out of the game for the time being until the rest of the team is dealt with. But back to the climbing, yes. So essentially you have 2 types of P-51H players. Ones that climb with the web, ones that don't. Now the ones that do climb with with water injection are of course going to have a harder time later on as the fight progresses, as eventually the water injection is going to run out and you're going to take the advantage. However, they are still the most dangerous, most likely, simply because you can't really keep up with their climb rate. The 262 is a very good aircraft, and if you keep it above 600 km per hour, you can essentially zoom climb up to the enemy and surprise them that way, especially since you are going to face a lot of people who just AFK climb, thinking that nothing can catch them, which is simply not the case. But as the match progresses and as the P-51Hs go higher, it gets more and more dangerous. The P-51H has a very high diving speed, it has very good acceleration at low speeds, it is very maneuverable, and those 50s can be nasty. Now the 262 of course is quite sturdy, as I've mentioned before, but even a 262 can't really survive fire set by the 50s, or imagine if they hit both of your engines. Even if they hit one of your engines, it's going to be a massive problem, since you are going to lose a lot of speed and compatibility, and you're not going to be able to outrun P-51Hs anymore. Now this P-51H is trying to go for one of my teammates. He's completely tunnel visioning into my teammate. I simply wait for the perfect moment, let those 2 30mm cannons rip with a short burst, and set him on flames. That is the 2nd kill so far. Shout out to that teammate, by the way. He did a essentially very perfect baiting there. The guy was just completely tunnel visioned into him and didn't even notice I was behind him. Now at this point we have taken down a lot of enemies actually. There's another P-51H trying to chase after an F-84G, our F-84G, which he's never going to catch. I think he has spotted me, he's trying to go for the evasion, but he simply doesn't have enough speed. Another shot, take off his wings, explode him. These 30mm cannons can be very good in one situation. If the enemy spots you and they try to evade you, and present their broadside, their broad what's it called? Profile. These cans can do a lot of work. Enemies that are slow, enemies that are presenting the broadside to you, enemies that you can get close to, they are going to die, they are going to explode. These things are like goddamn shotguns, literally double-barrel shotguns, and given that you have 2 cannons. However, if the enemy is running away from you, then things start to become a little bit more, let's say, bad. Now, oh, actually, yeah, this is the point. I mentioned earlier how the M262 was pretty maneuverable. Now here we are in essentially what is a dogfight against the P-51H. Now, the M262 cannot sustain dogfights against P-51Hs. You simply are going to lose too much energy, too much speed, and once you lose all that speed, it's very hard to get it back. And of course, you're going to be turning very, very sluggishly. But in these short engagements here, where the guy's trying to go for some of our teammates, he's trying to evade, he's trying to do short turns, you can actually keep up with him pretty darn well. Even though the P-51H has combat flaps that go up to 620 km per hour. We also have combat flaps. Of course, they break up earlier, but at speeds we can turn pretty damn well. You saw earlier against the F-84G. Oh, that explosion. You saw earlier against the F-84G, RTB, F-84B or CR, I'm completely confused about numbers. You saw early on how we were able to turn 13 Gs, making him break his wingtip, whilst we were completely fine. And you can do the same against the props when you're up at speed, and it's just really the testament of the all-round awesomeness of this aircraft. I really, really love it. Now, these are all the 4 kills we're going to get. Oh, it's only 4 kills, Mike. Ugh. I was trying to go for the ace. At this point, there's still 1 player left on the enemy team. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it is. We don't know pretty much anything about him. Now, at this point, I'm pretty much out of ammo. I've expended all of my ammo load on those 4 aircraft. This thing doesn't carry much ammo to begin with, so you really have to work on your trigger discipline. But I'm trying to go back to base. And, as all of you T-62 pilots know, there's a very interesting way to land the T-62s and very effective way as well. Let's skip forward to that. Notice that I'm not taking any landing gear. Yup, classic T-62 engine landing. Honestly, it never gets old. I've done hundreds of these landings and it just never gets old. Now, one of our team has taken a blind hunt order, which means we can see the last enemy guy. Can I get an ace? Well, no, not quite. It's a B-29 up in space. In fact, as you can see by the number of the time up in the replay bar, we're going to be chasing this guy down for the next 20 minutes. We are eventually going to win this game by ticket bleed, given that the ground targets are going to appear and we're going to simply win the game. But I was actually stupid enough to try and climb up to him. The M262 doesn't really perform well at those altitudes. The guy's going to be at 12 kilometers pretty much on the map border, and we are simply not going to be able to catch him at all. What I should have done is simply bail out here and carry a bomb. As I said before, the T-62 can carry a single 500 kilogram bomb, which also makes it very, very good for realistic battle ground forces, by the way. It's an excellent CAS aircraft and air defense fighter. And I should just grind some more RP. But, oh well, it's not to be. Now, of course, I do want to not make you guys believe that this is a foolproof method. No. You are still going to lose games if you take out this aircraft. Especially if the enemy team is carrying a full team of B-29s. Those are essentially hard counters. The M262s can't really climb up to altitude of the B-29s before they can reach the bases and nuke them completely. But it makes for very boring gameplay for both the Allies and the Germans. Against P-51Hs, you're going to have some troubles against very good pilots. But if you're facing off against people who don't climb enough, who try to go low and dogfight with jets, or who simply AFK climb, yeah, you're going to have a field day. Now, to some extent, you can do the same thing with the Narwhal, of course, but Narwhal simply isn't that great of an aircraft. And I would definitely not recommend having full teams of Narwhals, because that's not going to work. But you can kind of see the point I'm getting at here. Anyways, lads, hopefully you have enjoyed this little video and the slaughter of the P-51H. Sorry for being kind of silent for this past week. I simply have had literally zero time to do any kind of video. Even this one, I simply grabbed a replay of a game I played yesterday. I'm just doing this recording now before I have to head back out and do my chores. It's been absolutely chaotic. Hopefully I can find some time to make some more patch 1.71 videos soon. I do have a couple of ideas in mind. Namely, I want to address the hash changes and make a CAS guide. I actually wanted to do a CAS guide for a while now, but I simply didn't feel comfortable doing it since CAS was just completely, well, overperforming and wrecking game after game. Putting more gasoline on the fire would not have been a great idea, but I do feel that CAS is in a really good spot now. It's really balanced and accessible to all nations, so I want to do a CAS guide and show you guys how I do my CAS, what my thought process is, and how I try to support my team. But anyways lads, my name's MikeGoesBoom, and as always, thanks for watching.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time. You can walk the path among the lines with your shattered frame of mind. Or instead you could always stay. We can wait right here and play until somehow you can find